I hope you've grabbed your business bestie, you have your contractor's notebook, your favorite beverage. We have some things to talk about this morning. So, to recap, the presidential landscape changed overnight. Sunday night, VP Kamala Harris is now running for president. We have to wait to see if she's the official Democratic nominated. You get where I'm going. It isn't official that she has the nomination. She was just endorsed by President Biden. That's all. There's still a process. She just has the official nomination. She hasn't been she has the official endorsement of the current president. She has not been endorsed by the DNC yet. That's what's going on that front. What we're talking about today is the last day of the RNC. Now, what I do with contracting chatter is we're coming up to the presidential election. We have several elections going on, local and nationally. I'm talking about the presidential election because it affects everybody. I'm not discussing it from a political standpoint because, quite frankly, there's enough political pundits. I'm talking about it from a business standpoint because it affects business. These people have influence over policies, and policy affects your businesses. It affects how you run your business. It affects how business strategy. It affects your ability to influence your community. Please, on TikTok, tap the screen, share the live, bring in your business besties so that we can keep the live going. Everyone else, you know what to do. Just catch the replays when you can. All contracting chatter replays are available on my YouTube channel, LT&A Consulting Group. So we're discussing it from the business perspective so that we can make informed decisions when it comes to business. That's all. That's it. That's all. I'm not here to tell anybody who to vote for. Your business founders, your decision makers, your thought leaders, however you classify yourself. You don't need me to tell you how to think. There's enough people out there doing that. You shouldn't want me to tell you how to think. With that said, I'm talking about the last day of the RNC because, quite frankly, with everything that went on with President Biden, we talked about that, and then I fell ill last week, so I couldn't get to the official Agenda 47 platform, which is President Trump's official agenda for his presidency. Agenda 47 is his official platform. I know there's this thing called Project 2025, which is a think piece that's running around here. It's a 900-page think piece. And a lot of people are running around and they keep referencing it. But Agenda 47 is Trump's official agenda for his presidency. So there is a difference between the two, and you hear people constantly talking about Project 2025. However, his official platform is Agenda 47. And he talked about Agenda 47 the last night of the RNC. When the DNC, or the Democratic National Convention, takes place in a few weeks, I will cover that as well. And we'll talk about that from a business perspective as well. And how that will shape contracts and how that will shape business and what that would look like. That is also when the official nomination will come out for whomever will carry the Democratic torch going forward. With that, let's go. So, President Trump, in his speech, he had an emphasis on education and education reform. He wants to re-empower teachers. So we're going to see a lot of reallocation of dollars towards education. Now we do know that he is about the getting rid of the Department of Education, the federal Department of Education. And a lot of people think that's a big deal. Actually, the Department of Education didn't exist before the 1960s. I don't remember the original founding date of the Department of Education. So it really isn't that big of a deal that the department, I don't want to say it's not that big of a deal. People acting as though schools wouldn't get funded if the Department of Education didn't exist are people who don't understand our history. Schools were funded prior to the Department of Education. So getting rid of the Department of Education would just remove a layer of bureaucracy and just would see the money go directly from federal level to state level. That's all he's talking about doing. So the contracts and the business would just cease to exist on a federal level and just exist on the state level. And what that would look like is a direct funding of the schools. You would see actually even spread of funding for the schools is what he's envisioning and what he's talking about. It would re-empower teachers. If anybody have students in school, you see teachers aren't as empowered as they used to be. They used to have more control in the classrooms. Now they don't. He's talking about returning power to the classrooms. And I have children, and I actually think that's a good thing. So there's too much bureaucracy. I'm going to interview or talk to some teachers to see what they think about the plan itself or the thought process itself. I know teachers really feel like they need to be re-empowered in the classroom. They've lost control in the classrooms. So restoring that power and that authority is a good thing. So I don't see how anybody can argue against that. So he's talking about tightening border crossing. Anybody who lives on the border, I think will think that's a good thing. There's obviously a border issue. People who feel like we should have open borders, aren't security conscious. Every sovereign nation protects itself. We can't go in and out of other countries. I remember going to Canada in high school. And at that time, all we needed was a birth certificate to prove we were US citizens. Now, we can't do that anymore. It used to be easy to go back and forth to Canada. Now, you can't do it like that anymore. So every sovereign nation controls access to its country. He's just talking about tightening that access to our country. I don't think that's a bad thing. How it's done and how we do that, building that border wall or continuing the building of the border wall, we're talking about construction contracts. We're talking about engineering contracts. So we're talking about flowing that money back. And let's keep this in mind. The Biden administration constructed the wall. So we need to be honest in this conversation. the Biden administration constructed part of the wall as well. So he's just talking about finishing it. He started it. Biden administration finished off part of it. He's just talking about finishing the rest of it. He's talking about controlling inflation. Now, I've talked to and I've listened to economists talk about the tax cuts that he implemented, and I try to get the information from sources that are impartial, or as impartial as they can be. And the impartial ones, and I really try to get impartial sources, say that the tax cuts under the Trump administration really did benefit everybody. Now, there are outliners who say that they didn't benefit from the tax cuts. We all understand that. Everybody benefited differently. Anybody who's gone to the grocery stores know that prices have increased. And that's with the rollback of the tax cuts. We have to be honest. So one of the things he's talking about is reinstituting tax cuts. Now, I will admit some of the math is beyond me. I will be honest to say that. Some of this math is beyond me. I am not a tax expert of that nature. I do know that one of his platform goals is to get rid of the income tax and to take us back to tariffs. I do understand that the tariff that he's talking about would increase cost on imported goods only. American-made goods would not see a price increase. You would only see price increases on imported goods. And I remember back in the 80s, now I was young, but I remember President Reagan doing that so that Harley Davidson and Ford could get a leg up in the automotive industry and revitalize those companies. So it's been done before, and to the benefit of American companies. And it was successful for the Harley Davidson company and for Ford to give those companies a rebound. So it's been done before, and it was done successfully. So to say that it wouldn't be successful, I think is a disingenuous argument, because it was done successfully back in the 80s. And that is actually where this thought process comes from. He's just talking about doing it on a grand scale. And according to this one historian, this country ran on a no income tax tariff system until the early 1920s anyway, because the income tax didn't exist before 1920s. And so it's something that could happen. We would have to shrink our government to make it sustainable. And that begs the question of what happens to all of those government employees that would lose their jobs. They would get, now this is a prediction. You would retire out the retirees. There are people who have been in their government jobs for 30, 40 years. They would retire them out. And once you retire them out, then you would just get rid of redundancies to shrink the government. So, is it doable? In theory, yes. I don't know. I've been listening to the economists. I've been listening to historians. I think it's interesting to see how to play out. I think the conversations around it are interesting. Our country isn't as small as it used to be when we existed on a flat tax basis. On a tariff basis. However, could we take our government back that small and exist based off of a tariff system? We probably could. And would it be better for our economy? I don't know. The experts are divided. So just because we've existed that way for almost 100 years doesn't mean that we could not return to that system. Would there be some upheaval? Yes. Because, we're humans and humans do not like change. And I really think that's the biggest thing. People do not like change. And it's the change that he's talking about that is making people uncomfortable when it comes to that particular tax change. And so, is he talking about people losing jobs? Yes. We'll see. So, we talked about his border, we talked about his inflation, energy costs. Now, President Trump, he's talking about us going back to drilling. Now, we do know that we are sitting on oil that we're not drilling, and we're importing oil again. Everybody knows that. We were building our own pipeline that we stopped building. We stopped building. So he's just talking about drilling our own oil instead of importing it again. Now, before the upheaval this weekend, I was following a news story where one of our largest oil partners is has decided to stop selling oil to us in a large scale like they used to. But I lost track of that story when President Biden decided to step down. So I might have to pick that story back up. Now, that was a big upheaval in the national, geopolitically. That's a big upheaval because that means oil prices are going to start going up again. So for us to drill our own oil is imperative. I don't believe electric vehicles. I always thought that his President Biden's stances on electric vehicles was not it. I'm just keeping it real. I don't think it was it. Our grid doesn't sustain it. And I don't think telling people that they have to buy electric vehicles is the way to go. People can't afford it, one. Two, it's un-American. I'm just saying it's un-American to tell people they have to purchase a certain way when they don't want to. If you're one of those green people, you're not going to like this stance. It's un-American to tell me I have to buy an electric vehicle because you think it's better for me to spend my money a certain way. The maintenance on electric vehicles, from what I've researched, replacing a battery on electric vehicles, it's expensive. $60 on a regular vehicle versus a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand for an EV one doesn't make sense. I know in my apartment complex, there isn't a charging port. There isn't a charging port here, which means we have to go somewhere to charge it. So I don't think, no, that doesn't make sense. Our power grid cannot sustain everybody being on an electric vehicle. And even if it could, there's too many other things. The average American electric bill is about $100 to $120 a month on top of the rising food prices. Now you want them to plug up a vehicle. And people are saying plugging up and charging vehicles doesn't increase your bill that much. However, if I have to choose between plugging up a car and buying food. No, I don't think that stance was wise. So, and for people who are saying it was never a mandate, you didn't read the infrastructure bill because that was the goal. The goal was to get rid of all fossil fuel cars and make everybody go electric vehicles. What President Trump is talking about is getting rid of rolling back the green initiative. We start back drilling and we become energy efficient on our own again, which would drive down inflation, would bring down gas prices. So yes, I think that is something people can get on board with. Once again, I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm just telling you what Agenda 47 is so that you can make an informed decision one way or the other. Now, for those of you who vote how you vote, no matter what, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to those who are making a decision based upon information. I'm talking to business owners, business founders, so that you can see where the government contracts are coming from based upon who is sitting in the seat. If Trump should win, the contracts are going to shift towards drilling, towards border control, towards increased construction along the border wall. You're going to see a lot of education. Now, I'm going to drop this tip. If you have been watching any of the hearings with the Secret Service and you do training, you really should be on that. You're going to see a whole lot of long training coming out of Department of Homeland Security. So if you do any type of training, you should have an eye on Homeland Security. And if you don't know how to position yourself so that you can pitch and take advantage of that, you need to be booking a call with me so we can get on the books with Homeland Security, because and if you do media relations, somebody should be in their ear to kind of, because that's what they're getting grilled about. They're getting grilled for not getting ahead of the game. They needed a media person. If I was in media, I would have been on the phone with them saying, "You're not doing a press conference?" I'm doing a segue. But if I was media, I would have been on the phone saying, "Where's your press conference? I can set this up for you. I will issue the press release for you. Here's how much it would cost for me to issue the press briefings, here for to do press releases," because that's what they're getting grilled about because of their poor handling. And this is why all the conspiracy theories got out and it's being run with, because unlike the FBI, Secret Service has till yet to do a press briefing. Immediately after the incident, they should have said, "This is what happened. He's being treated, and we will release more information as it comes," and walked off the stand. That's all they had to do. If I was in media relations, I would have been on the phone with Secret Service saying, "This is what I can do for you. This is how much a contract will cost for this for 30, 60, 90 days. Because obviously they don't know what they're doing. That's a government contract. And if you know how to pitch and position yourself, you could become their media liaisons person for the next 90 days. Somebody needs to step in there and help old girl out because she don't know how to testify because she actually perjured herself before Congress because her testimony directly conflicted with her boss's testimony, and she got caught in 4K. I don't think it was deliberate, but she didn't know how to do the political tap dance And that's because she didn't have anybody, or she refused to listen to anybody. I don't know which one it is, to help her, because as soon as the incident happened, she should have been prepared for that hearing. I don't know why, because the answer to the question of how long have you been preparing to speak should have been as soon as the bullet flew. That should have been her answer. I mean, because obviously she was coming before Congress. But anyway, government contracts. I'm not a media person, so I didn't contact anybody. But if you were in media, you should have been on the phone. As soon as you didn't see a press briefing, I'd have been like this. I'd have been sending emails. That's a government contract. I'm just telling you the opportunities. But let me get back on track. President Trump's Agenda 47. He was talking about the international crisis. Now, if you're a humanitarian and you do humanitarian work, there are opportunities to position yourself. And a lot of people forget that you can piggyback off of military contracts with humanitarian work. People don't think about that. You just have to know how to look for it and how to position. A lot of people give the military grief because they think war with military, but the military does partner with humanitarian work because somebody has to protect the humanitarian efforts. They help with the lifting. They help protect the people who go in. They actually help identify hotspots. So he's talking about the international crisis as a part of Agenda 47. He wants to pay off debt. Now, I'm going to have to read because I'm talking about what he talked about at the RNC versus what's in Agenda 47 because I haven't read through it in detail. I don't know how he's going to pay off our national debt. I do know the tariffs on international goods will pay off our debt, is his thought process, because it will force Americans to buy American goods, which will stimulate our economy. That makes sense. It will also stop foreign companies and foreign governments from buying up our land. That makes sense. I would just have to think about some more things. I already talked about the finishing the wall. I mean, his speech was long, and I know I tuned some things out because it was late when he took the stage. Now, as much as he talks about ending international crisis, he wants to destabilize Iran. So he's talking about ending the Ukraine war, ending the Israeli conflict, and destabilizing Iran. Those things, quite frankly, are going to require military intervention. Once again, to me, humanitarian efforts and humanitarian contracts. We talked about him driving prices down through the tax reduction. The reduction in transportation costs, that goes back to drilling more to bring down oil. We talked about energy producing, which is oil again. The energy efficiency, he's just going to take the money from the green initiatives and redirect them. This notion, now I heard in this TikTok live, and I know that's not a good place to get a lot of your information. He's not destroying the EPA. He is not getting rid of the Weather Channel. That is not what's happening. What he's doing is taking money from the green initiatives, and he's reallocating them back to, like as I said previously, fossil fuels and infrastructure. And what does that mean? Building bridges, repairing the roads. Good morning, Keisha. He's rebuilding roads. He's tough because our infrastructure needs infrastructuring. And there's been such a focus on green initiative until, you know what, I didn't see if you was in here. I should have sent you the live. I've been talking about Agenda 47. I have not caught up with Kamala Harris's platform yet. I'm going to talk about her tomorrow. I know she announced some of her focuses, and yeah, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So yeah, we're going to talk about Kamala Harris tomorrow. Today, I'm talking about President Trump's Agenda 47 and what he talked about at the RNC, so people can shape their contracting plans based upon what a Trump presidency would look like. Once again, this is not a political post. This is if Trump is president, this is what he's talking about. I was going to do it based upon Biden, but Biden dropped out. I'm covering the DNC when it comes. Yeah, I watched part of her thing yesterday. I'm gonna cover the DNC when it happens. I'm gonna cover the roll call on August 1st. As of what I saw, they're not changing the unofficial roll call on August 1st. And keep this in mind, this is not a political platform. This is good morning. This is a business platform. And I cover all things government contracting, all things legislation from a business perspective. So you can see, look, these people influence bills, they influence taxes, and it influences how your business operates, period, point blank, in a discussion. So when you're talking about making business decisions, how are you budgeting? Because if your budget does not include taxes, you have an incomplete budget. And you do. You have an incomplete budget. Now, segue commercial. If anybody wants to donate to the platform to support this platform, because now I'm doing this on my own, you can donate to the Cash App, or you can scan the QR code to make a donation to keep the broadcast going. I want to bring on some guests so that they can talk, but the experts charge. And that's what the donations go towards, paying the experts to come on. But they all charge, and there's nothing wrong with paying a person what they are due. So on TikTok, it's in my description. You can drop a donation on all the other platforms. There's a QR code you can scan to make a donation. You can subscribe and become a member of the Chatter family for $9.99 a month. The subscription comes with a newsletter. There are subscriber-only lives. And there's some more details that go along with the joining the Chatter family. So back to Agenda 47. And keep in mind, this whole Project 2025 is a think piece that is not supported by any of the running and anybody running. It's a think piece. President Trump's position is Agenda 47. And that is what we're talking about this morning. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about Kamala Harris and what her position is and what her presidency is based upon. And I'm going to say this. There is a call for President Biden to actually step down and not complete his term. And if he answers that call, because quite frankly, we haven't seen him since he's had COVID and was taken away in Nevada. If he answers that call and does step down, we will get a glimpse at a Kamala presidency. So the elections in November, we will get 3 months of a Kamala presidency. Keep that in mind. There's a call for President Biden to step down and not complete his term. Keep that in mind. TikTok, I'm asking you to share the live. Everybody else, I'm asking you to tag your business bestie in this broadcast. Keep all of that in mind. We're going to talk more about that tomorrow, but today we're completing the conversation about Agenda 47 and what President Trump talked about the last night of the RNC. He talked about returning car manufacturing to the U.S. Now, Delaware had to shutter 2 of its big car plants. And I know it put a lot of people out of work. And I talked about it a little earlier. In the 80s, Ronald Reagan did the exact same thing. He put a heavy tariff on car imports so that Ford and Harley-Davidson could get a foothold in the market and revitalize their companies. He's taken a page out of Reagan's playbook. So it's not a new concept. A lot of automotive companies moved their operations right over the border into Mexico, cheap labor, and then are importing cars back into the U.S., which are taking jobs from the U.S. However, they're selling to us. What President Trump is saying is no, what you will do is reopen the plants that you closed and employ Americans again. That's what you're going to do. And adhere to the standards here in America. That's it. So I think that's a good thing. He's taken a page out of a playbook that worked in the 80s. If anybody, I remember because I grew up in Delaware. So I remembered when Reagan did that because a lot of people who were laid off during that time or lost their job got called back to work. And it revitalized Delaware and it revitalized the working industry. And it did a lot for the economy. So he took something that worked and he's saying that if it worked once, it'll work again. So that sounds like a good thing. He's ending the electric vehicle mandate. We talked about that earlier. A lot of people weren't aware of that a part of President Biden's infrastructure plan included an electric vehicle mandate. And that was all automakers had to switch to electric vehicles. And you weren't going to be able to buy fossil fuel cars. I believe it was by the 2030, 2040. A lot of people weren't aware of that. President Trump wants to end that. That's what he's talking about, rolling back the Green Initiative. So, and that's I spoke about earlier. Our grid wouldn't be able to sustain that anyway, and that's part of the reason why rents are going up, because rental properties would have to install 2 to 3 electric vehicles, change charging stations at minimum. It will be based upon the size of the complex. That's why you're seeing every new complex having at least 2 charging stations. It's because of that mandate. So there's a lot of things, and that's why the infrastructure, the Biden infrastructure bill had charging stations being placed in like weird places. And people were like, why are they putting these stations in these places? That's why, because of that mandate. And President Trump is saying, we don't need this. We need to drill for energy efficiency. Our grid can't stay here, especially places like California, New York, and Texas. You know, Texas just came through a storm. They really couldn't take it. And then in remote areas in middle America, why? It just doesn't make sense. So that just covered the last day of the RNC. I'm going to deep dive into Agenda 47 again. Tomorrow we're talking about Kamala Harris's platform. I believe she finally released her platform because it wasn't up as of yesterday. I believe she finally released what her platform was. For those of you who said we always knew, no, we didn't. There was an assumption of what it was. People assumed it was the same as Biden's. I don't make assumptions. I need to see it in writing. Hey, Mo. And we can't make assumptions. There's too much at risk for assumptions. And even then, we need to see if the actions match what's in writing. As I said, this is just so that people can make an informed decision and make your business plan match what is a potential presidential candidate going into FY 2025. Follow the dollars. Whatever their agenda is will control the contracts. It will control the flow of the federal money. Simply put, it will control the flow of the federal money. So if you want to know where the contracting opportunities are, you need to know what their agenda is. You need to know what their focus is. That's why it's important to understand what their platforms are. However you fall politically, you need to understand that as business owners. It's just that simple. So join me tomorrow, and if anything exciting happens, I'll go live later on today. But as of right now, I'm going live again tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will discuss Kamala Harris's planned platform and what she's stating her agenda for her presidency will be. And you can make your decision on how you're going to vote. Now, for those of you who vote one way no matter what, this broadcast isn't for you. If you're a business owner, this broadcast is for you because your strategic plan need to be based upon who is sitting in the office and how their policies will affect your business. Point blank, period, in the discussion. You need to understand how the money flows from the federal to the state. You need to understand what's going on locally. Now, I don't cover much on the local elections because everybody's local situation is different, and I cannot reasonably cover all 50 states and the territories. I can't reasonably do that. I do on occasion bring in things that happen locally when it has national implication. Just as when there are contracts that appear in one state that will most likely duplicate across multiple states. I do that. But I will talk about this. There are already 4 names being bandied about that Kamala Harris is considering as her VP pick. And the governor of North Carolina is one of them. Let that fall how you want that to fall. I found that very interesting. That the governor of North Carolina is being bandied as one of her vice presidential picks. So I will see you tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for another edition of Contracting Chatter. We will talk about Kamala Harris's platform, what her agenda for her presidency is going to be. Once again, if you're in media, somebody call the Secret Service and pitch a contract. If you need to know how to do it, call me, get on my calendar so I can help you form something, because somebody need to help them out. Because, oh my God, that congressional hearing was painful to watch. Because girlfriend needs she needs a personal press secretary. The agency needs a press secretary. Everybody needs a press secretary. And if I was in media, I would have been pitching myself. I'd have been pitching a 90-day contract. And look, y'all need somebody to help y'all because they was terrible. All bad grammar is intended. That was terrible. She needed somebody sitting beside her, kicking her every step of the way. Stop saying it. Stop saying it. She needed somebody to have a prepared brief that she read. Matter of fact, she needed somebody to have prepared answers to point at the answers. She needed somebody sitting there doing this the whole time she was answering Congress. To point at the answers she should have been given because she was terrible. I wanted to go live during that congressional briefing to discuss how she should have been answering questions. Yes, girl, you do, because that's a contract. That's a 90-day contract, at minimum 90 days. And I'm gonna go here. Secret Service needs a 90 days to get them through this mess, and then they need another 6 months contract to rebuild their image, not only in the US, but around the world, because this is damaging to their image. Secret Service was the creme de la creme for securing leaders. And this is damaging. You have the head of Secret Service saying, well, the FBI, well, the FBI, well, the FBI. no leadership, no ownership. She didn't even come in there with a preliminary report. And I'm like, you girl, what? You can't say I'm in charge and I take responsibility. And every word that comes out your mouth is somebody else, somebody else, somebody else. That's not taking responsibility. That's not taking ownership. Her answer should have been, the preliminary findings are these, but we cannot issue a final report until these agencies are completing their part of the research. And then we will combine our research together to issue a final report that will come out within. That is what she should have said. That is what she should have said. She had no training. And for them to try to keep deflecting to make it a Second Amendment argument and to try to make it a DEI argument, it was disingenuous and didn't make themselves look good. It didn't make it look any better. It actually made it look worse for her, because it made it look as though they was trying to remove responsibility from her. And no, I don't want you to cover for me. I want you to hold me to the same standards that you would have held to the next person. You cannot, I say it again, and I say it all the time, I can't be an empowered victim. And we as women, and I'm going to say this, and you can hate me for it, we as women can't advocate for these positions. And then when times get hard, we want to cry and moan and say they're picking on us. We can't do it. I remember, and this is when I went into compliance, back in 2007, April Stevens was the head of DCAA, and they raked her over the coals, and it wasn't even her fault. But that woman showed more grit at that time and offered up her resignation. And it really wasn't her fault what happened than this woman at Secret Service is doing right now. And if anybody don't know who April Stevens is, she ran DCAA, which is the Defense Contract Audit Agency, back at 2006, 2007. And she resigned over a scandal, and it wasn't her fault. You offer your resignation other than instead of being fired in the federal level. And let me tell you something. I wouldn't have been, ain't no way on this side of God's green earth would I have sat through that meeting and had all them Congress people saying I should be being told I need to resign and not offered my resignation. I wouldn't have got dragged like that. And after they played a clip of my testimony directly contradicting my boss, I'd have got me a piece of paper, a napkin, writing my resignation. She was not prepared. You can't be an empowered victim. She came in there thinking she was going to skate through, and she skated to her demise. We cannot advocate for positions of power and not be prepared for what comes with the power. And that means taking the fall, whether you're at fault or not. Being in charge means you take the fall, whether you was at fault or not. Period. In the discussion. Maybe it wasn't her fault. I don't know. But guess what? You're in charge, so that makes it your fault. And with that, I will see you tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for another edition of Contracting Chatter. You cannot be an empowered victim. You always have to be in a position of authority. You're always at fault. You will always have to accept responsibility. Period. Especially in governance. I will see you tomorrow.